The Lord of the Rings. Book 1. Chapter 6. The Old Forest. Frodo woke. It turned into nonetheless darkish in the room. Merry became standing there with a candle in a single hand, and banging at the door with the other. "All proper, what's it?" said Frodo, nevertheless shaken and bewildered. "What's it?" cried Merry. "It is time to rise up. It is 4:30 and really foggy. Come on. Sam is already getting breakfast equipped. Even Pippin is up. I'm simply going to saddle the ponies, and fetch the one. This is to be the luggage carrier. Wake that sluggard Fatty. At least he ought to stand up and see us off." Quickly after 6 o'clock the hobbits were ready to begin. Fatty Bulger become nevertheless yawning. They stole quietly out of the residence. Merry went in the front leading a weighted down pony, and took his manor alongside a direction that went via a spinney at the back of the house, and then reduce across numerous elds. The leaves of bushes have been glistening, and each twig was dripping, the grass turned into grey with bloodless dew. The whole thing was nonetheless, faraway noises regarded near and clear, fowls chattering in a yard, someone final a door of a far-off residence. Of their shed they discovered the ponies, strong little beasts of the type loved with the aid of hobbits, no longer speedy, however correct for a protracted day's paintings. They established, and soon they had been riding off into the mist, which regarded to open reluctantly earlier than them and close forbiddingly in the back of them. After using for approximately an hour, slowly and without talking, they saw the hedge looming ahead. It became tall and netted over with silver cobwebs. "How are you going to get through this?" requested Fred Egger. "Comply with me," said Merry, "and you'll see." He turned to the left, alongside the hedge, and shortly they got here to a point wherein it bent inwards, running alongside the lip of a hollow. A slicing had been made, at some distance from the hedge, and went sloping gently down into the ground. It had walls of brick at the sides, which rose gradually, till abruptly they arched over and shaped a tunnel that dived deep underneath the hedge and came out inside the hole on the opposite aspect. Here Fatty Bulger halted. 6 Guy 44B5 BB0 at 8 Dick 5315 A8 A4 CCFBC, Frodo. He stated. "I desire you have been not going into the woodland. I handiest hope you will no longer need rescuing earlier than the day is out. However desirable good fortune to you these days and every day. If there are not any worse matters in advance than the vintage forest, I shall be fortunate," said Frodo. "Inform Gandalf to rush alongside the east road, we shall soon be again on it and going as fast as we are able to." 6 Guy 44B5 BB0 at 8 Dick 5315 A8 A4 CCFBC, they cried, and rode down the slope and disappeared from Fred Egger's sight into the tunnel. It became darkish and damp. On the aways give up it turned into closed by way of a gate of thick-set iron bars. Merry got down and unlocked the gate, and whilst that they had all passed through he driven it to again. It shut with a clang, and the lock clicked. The sound changed into ominous. "There," stated Merry. "You've got left the Shire, and are actually outdoor, and on the brink of the antique wooded area. Are the stories about it authentic?" requested Pippin. "I don't understand what tales you mean," Merry spoke back. "In case you suggest the vintage bogey tales Fatty's nurses used to inform him, approximately goblins and wolves and matters of that kind, I should say no. At any rate I don't agree with them. However, the wooded area is queer. The whole thing in its miles. Very an awful lot extra alive, extra aware of what goes on, so to speak, than matters are within the Shire. And the bushes do not like strangers. They watch you. They may be normally content simply to observe you, so long as daylight hours lasts, and don't do a lot every so often the maximum unfriendly. Ones may also drop a branch, or stick a root out, or draw close at you with a long trailer. But at night things can be maximum alarming, or so I'm advised. I've simplest a couple of times been in right here after darkish, after which only near the hedge I concept all of the trees have been whispering to each different, passing information and plots along in an unintelligible language, and the branches swayed and groped without any wind. They do say the bushes do in reality move, and might surround strangers and hem them in. In truth lengthy in the past they attacked the hedge, they came and planted themselves right with the aid of it, and leaned over it. However the hobbits got here and cut down loads of bushes, and made a remarkable bonra inside the forest, and burned all the ground in an extended strip east of the hedge. After that, the timber gave up the assault, however they became very unfriendly. There remains a extensive bare area not a long way interior in which the bonra changed into made. Is it handiest the bushes which might be dangerous? Asked Pippin. There are various queer matters dwelling deep in the wooded area, and on the a long way aspect, stated Merry, or at the least I've heard so. However I've by no means visible any of them, but something makes paths each time one comes interior one nds open tracks, but they seem to shift and change from time to time in a queer fashion. Now not a ways from this tunnel there may be, or turned into for a long time, the beginning of pretty a large path leading to the bonra glade, and then on more or much less in our course, east and a little north. This is the path I am going to try and nd. The hobbits now left the tunnel gate and rode throughout the extensive hole. On the a long way facet changed into a faint path leading up directly to the oar of the wooded area, 100 yards and greater beyond the hedge, but it vanished as quickly as it introduced them below the bushes. Looking lower back they ought to see the dark line of the hedge via the stems of bushes that have been already thick approximately them. Searching beforehand they could see only tree trunks of innumerable styles and sizes, directly or bent, twisted, leaning, squat or slim, smooth or gnarled and branched, and all the stems have been green or grey with moss and slimy, shaggy growths. Merry by myself seemed pretty joyful. You had higher lead on and that route, Frodo said to him. Don't let us lose one another, or neglect which way the hedge lies. They picked a manner most of the bushes, and their ponies plodded along, carefully averting the many writhing and interlacing roots. There was no undergrowth. The floor became rising steadily, and as they went ahead it regarded that the timber became taller, darker, and thicker. There has been no sound, except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the nevertheless leaves. For the instant there was no whispering or movement. Most of the branches, however, all of them were given an uncomfortable feeling that they had been being watched with disapproval, deepening to dislike or even enmity. The sensation progressively grew, until they determined themselves searching up quickly, or glancing back over their shoulders, as though they expected a sudden blow. There was not as but any signal of a direction, and the bushes seemed constantly to bar their manner. Pippin abruptly felt that he couldn't endure it any longer, and without warning let out a shout. "Oi! Oi!" he cried. "I'm not going to do whatever, just let me pass through, will you?" The others halted startled, however the cry fell as if muffled by means of a heavy curtain. There was no echo or answer, although the wooden regarded to come to be greater crowded and extra watchful than before. I should not shout, if I had been you, stated Merry. It does extra damage than proper. Frodo started out to wonder if it have been feasible to end a way through, and if he were right to make the others come into this abominable wood. Merry become searching to and fro, and regarded already, unsure which way to head. Pippin noticed it. It has now not taken you lengthy to lose us, he said. However, at that second Merry gave a whistle of comfort and pointed in advance. Nicely, properly, he stated. These bushes do shift. There may be the Bonra glade in front of us, or I hope so, but the route to it appears to have moved away. The light grew clearer as they went forward. They came out of the trees and located themselves in an extensive circular space. There changed into sky above them, blue and clear to their marvel, for down beneath the forest roof that they had not been able to see the rising morning and the lifting of the mist. The solar changed into now not, but, high sufficient but to shine down into the clearing, though its mild turned into on the tree tops. The leaves were all thicker and greener about the rims of the glade, enclosing it with an almost stable wall. No tree grew there, best tough grass and many tall plant life, stocky and faded hemlocks and wood parsley, reweed seeding into uffy ashes, and rampant nettles and thistles. A dreary region, but it seemed a captivating and cheerful garden. After the near woodland, the hobbits felt encouraged, and regarded up hopefully at the broadening daytime within the sky. At the far facet of the glade there has been a ruin inside the wall of timber, and a clean route past it. They might see it going for walks on into the timber, extensive in locations and open above, though each occasionally the timber drew in and overshadowed it with their darkish boughs. Up this course they rode. They had been nonetheless hiking gently, however they now went a whole lot faster, and with better coronary heart, for it seemed to them that the wooded area had relented, and became going to allow them to skip unhindered after all. However, after a while the air started out to get warm and stuffy. The bushes drew close once more on both facet, and they may now not see a ways beforehand. Now more potent than ever they felt again the ill will of the wooden pressing on them. So silent become it that the fall in their ponies' hoofs, rustling on useless leaves and occasionally stumbling on hidden roots, regarded to thud in their ears. Frodo attempted to sing a music to encourage them, but his voice sank to a murmur. Oh, wanderers in the shadowed land, despair not! For although darkish they stand, all woods there be should cease at remaining, and spot the open solar pass beyond. The placing solar, the growing solar, the day's give up, or the day begun. For east or west all woods ought to fail. Fail. Even as he said the phrase his voice dwindled into silence. The air appeared heavy and the making of words wearisome. Just behind them a large department fell from an antique overhanging tree with a crash into the course. The bushes regarded to close in earlier than them. They do no longer like every that about finishing and failing, said Merry. I should no longer sing any more at gift. Wait until we do get to the facet, and then we'll turn and give them a rousing refrain. He spoke cheerfully, and if he felt any remarkable anxiety, he did not display it. The others did not answer. They have been depressed. A heavy weight was settling steadily on Frodo's coronary heart, and he regretted now, with each leap forward, that he had ever notion of challenging the risk of the timber. He changed into, indeed, just about to prevent and recommend going lower back if that changed into nevertheless possible, while things took a brand new turn. The course stopped mountaineering, and became for a while nearly degree. They dark trees drew apart, and beforehand they may see the route going nearly straight forward. Earlier than them, but some distance off, there stood a inexperienced hilltop, treeless, growing like a bald head out of the surrounding wood. The path regarded to be making at once for it. They now hurried ahead again, overjoyed with the idea of mountain climbing out for some time above the roof of the woodland. The course dipped, and then again started to climb upwards, main them at remaining to the foot of the steep hillside. There it left the timber and diminished into the turf. The wooden stood all spherical, the hill like thick hair that ended sharply in a circle, spherical, a shaven crown. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round until they reached the top. There they stood and gazed about them. The air became glowing and sunlit, but hazy, and they could not see to any fantastic distance. Near handy the mist became now almost long past, though right here and there it lay in hollows of the wooden, and to the south of them, out of a deep fold cutting proper throughout the wooded area, the fog still rose like steam or wisps of white smoke. "That," said Merry, pointing along with his hand, "that is the line of the Withywindle. It comes down out of the downs and goes southwest through the midst of the forest to join the Brandywine underneath. Hastened. We don't need to move that way. The Withywindle Valley is stated to be the queerest part of the whole wood, in the center from which all of the queerness comes, because it were. The others seemed inside the path that Merry pointed out, but they could see little but mists over the damp and deep-cut valley, and past it the southern half of the forest dwindled from view. The sun on the hill pinnacle was now getting warm. It ought to were about 11 o'clock, however the autumn haze nevertheless averted them from seeing an awful lot in different instructions. In the west they could not make out either the line of the hedge or the valley of the Brandywine past it. Northward, where they regarded maximum with a bit of luck, they may see nothing. That is probably the road of the amazing East Street, for which they had been making. They were on an island in a sea of trees, and the horizon changed into veiled. At the southeastern aspect the floor fell very steeply, as if the slopes of the hill were persevered far down under the bushes, like island shores that in reality are the sides of a mountain growing out of deep waters. They sat on the inexperienced side and regarded out over the woods underneath them, while they ate their midday meal. As the solar rose and exceeded midday they glimpsed far off inside the east the grey-green strains of the downs that lay past the old woodland on that facet. That cheered them greatly, for it changed into true to peer a sight of something past the wooden borders, even though they did now not mean to head that manner, if they ought to help it. The Barrow Downs had a sinister recognition in Hobbit legend because the woodland itself. At length they made up their minds to head on again. The path that had delivered them to the hill reappeared on the northward aspect, but that they had no longer followed it a ways earlier than they became conscious that it become bending steadily to the proper. Quickly it started out to descend swiftly, and they guessed that it must clearly be heading closer to the Withywindle Valley, under no circumstances the route they needed to take. After some discussion they decided to leave this deceptive route and strike northward, for although they'd not been capable of see it from the hill pinnacle, the road should lie that manner, and it could not be many miles off. Also, northward, and to the left of the path, the land seemed to be drier and greater open, climbing as much as slopes wherein the trees have been thinner, and pines and rs changed the oak and ashes and different odd and nameless timber of the denser timber. At rst their desire regarded to be true, they got along at a fair velocity, even though each time they got a glimpse of the solar in an open glade they regarded unaccountably to have veered eastwards. However, after a time the trees began to close in once more, simply where they had regarded from a distance to be thinner and less tangled. Then deep folds inside the floor were determined suddenly, like the ruts of top-notch massive wheels or huge moats and sunken roads lengthy disused and choked with brambles. These lay usually proper across their line of march, and could handiest be crossed by means of scrambling down and out again, which turned into troublesome and difficult with their ponies. Every time they climbed down they observed the whole led with thick bushes and dishevelled undergrowth, which somehow might not yield to the left, however only gave manner when they grew to become to the right, and they had to go far along the bottom earlier than they might end a manner up the further financial institution. Each time they clambered out, the timber seemed deeper and darker, and constantly to the left and upwards it turned into maximum difficult to end a manner, and that they were pressured to the proper and downwards. After an hour or two they'd lost all clean experience of path, though they knew nicely sufficient that they had lengthy ceased to move northward at all. They have been being headed off, and had been definitely following a course selected for them eastwards and southwards, into the heart of the wooded area and now not out of it. The afternoon become sporting away once they scrambled and stumbled right into a fold that was wider and deeper than any that they had yet met. It changed into so steep and overhung that it proved not possible to climb out of it again, either forwards or backwards, without leaving their ponies and their bags at the back of. All they may do changed into to follow the fold downwards. The ground grew soft, and in locations boggy, springs regarded within the banks, and shortly they found themselves following a brook that trickled and babbled via a weedy bed. Then the floor commenced to fall rapidly, and the brook growing sturdy and noisy, owed and leaped swiftly downhill. They were in a deep dim-lit gully overarched by means of timber high above them. After stumbling along for a few way along the circulation, they came pretty unexpectedly out of the gloom. As if through a gate they saw the daylight earlier than them. Coming to the outlet they determined that they had made their manner down through a cleft in a excessive steep bank, nearly a cliff. At its foot was a huge space of grass and reeds, and inside the distance can be glimpsed another financial institution almost as steep. A golden afternoon of past dew sunshine lay warm and drowsy upon the hidden land among. Inside the midst of it there wound lazily a dark river of brown water, bordered with ancient willows, arched over with willows, blocked with fallen willows, and decked with lots of diminished willow leaves. The air become thick with them, uttering yellow from the branches, for there was a heat and gentle breeze blowing softly within the valley, and the reeds were rustling, and the willow boughs have been creaking nicely. Now I have at the least some notion of in which we are, stated Merry. We've got come nearly within the contrary route to which we meant. This is the river with a windle, I'm able to go on and discover. He surpassed out into the light and disappeared into the long grasses. After a while he reappeared, and reported that there was pretty solid ground between the cliff foot and the river, in a few places. Turf went all the way down to the water's facet. What's extra, he stated, there seems to be something like a footpath winding alongside in this aspect of the river. If we turn left and comply with it, we shall be certain to pop out on the east aspect of the forest finally. I dare say, stated Pippin. This is, if the music goes on to date, and does no longer honestly lead us right into a bathroom and leave us there. Who made the music, do you assume, and why I am positive it turned into not for our Bennett. I get very suspicious of this forest and everything in it, and that I begin to consider all the stories about it. And have you ever any concept how some distance eastward we must need to move? No, stated Merry, I haven't. I don't recognize in the least how far down the Withywindle we're, or who ought to in all likelihood come here regularly. Sufficient to make a route along it. But there's no other way out that I will see or think of. There being not anything else for it, they led out, and Merry led them to the course that he had observed. Everywhere the reeds and grasses were lush and tall, in locations a long way above their heads. However, as soon as determined, the course was clean to comply with, as it became entwisted, choosing out the sounder floor among the bathrooms and pools. Right here and there it surpassed over other rills, running down gullies into the Withywindle out of the better woodland lands, and at those factors there have been tree trunks or bundles of brushwood laid cautiously across. The hobbits began to feel very hot. There had been armies of eyes of a wide variety buzzing round their ears, and the afternoon sun changed into burning on their backs. At closing they got here all of sudden into a skinny coloration, brilliant grey branches reached throughout the root. Each breakthrough became extra reluctant than the closing. Sleepiness appeared to be creeping out of the floor and up their legs, and falling softly out of the air upon their heads and eyes. Frodo felt his chin go down and his head nod. Simply in front of him, Pippin fell ahead directly to his knees. Frodo halted. "It's no proper," he heard Merry pronouncing. "Can't he go every other step without rest? Have to have nap? It's cool underneath the willows. Less ice." Frodo did not just like the sound of this. "Come on!" he cried. "We can't have a sleep yet. We need to get clean of the forest rst." But the others were too a ways gone to care. Beside them Sam stood yawning and blinking stupidly. All at once Frodo himself felt sleep overwhelming him. His head swam. There now appeared hardly a sound within the air. The eyes had stopped humming. Only a gentle noise on the brink of listening to, a smooth uttering as of a track half whispered, seemed to stir inside the boughs. Above. He lifted his heavy eyes and noticed leaning over him a big willow tree, old and hoary. Big it looked, its sprawling branches going up like attaining hands with many lengthy engeared hands, its knotted and twisted trunk gaping in wide sores that creaked faintly because the boughs moved. The leaves uttering against the brilliant sky dazzled him, and he toppled over, lying where he fell upon the grass. Merry and Pippin dragged themselves forward and lay down with their backs to the willow trunk. In the back of them the exceptional cracks gaped, huge to receive them because the tree swayed and creaked. They looked up at the grey and yellow leaves, shifting softly towards the mild, and making a song. They closed their eyes, after which it appeared that they may nearly listen phrases, cool phrases, pronouncing something about water and sleep. They gave themselves as much as the spell and fell speedy asleep at the foot of the brilliant grey willow. Frodo lay for some time ting with the sleep that became overpowering him, then with an attempt he struggled to his toes once more. He felt a compelling desire for cool water. "Watch for me, Sam," he stammered. "Have to shower foot a minute." Half of in a dream he wandered ahead to the riverward side of the tree, where terrific winding roots grew out into the circulate, like gnarled dragonets straining right down to drink. He straddled this type of, and paddled his hot foot within the cool brown water, and there he too suddenly fell asleep together with his again against the tree. Sam sat down and scratched his head, and yawned like a cavern. He turned into concerned. The afternoon was getting past due, and he idea this unexpected sleepiness uncanny. "There's extra in the back of this than solar and warm air," he muttered to himself. "I don't like this amazing massive tree. I don't consider it. Hark at it making a song about sleep now. This received to do it all." He pulled himself to his toes, and staggered off to see what had come to be of the ponies. He located that had wandered on a terrific way along the direction, and he had simply stuck them and brought them lower back in the direction of the others, when he heard noises, one loud, and the other smooth, however very clean. One was the splash of something heavy falling into the water, the alternative was a noise just like the snick of a lock, while a door quietly closes speedy. He rushed back to the financial institution. Frodo turned into inside the water near the part, and a tremendous tree root seemed to be over him and preserving him. Down, however, he become now not suffering. Sam gripped him via the jacket, and dragged him from beneath the basis, after which with difficulty hauled him on to the bank. Almost at once he woke, and coughed and spluttered. "Do you recognize, Sam," he said at period, "the beastly tree threw me in. I felt it. The large root just twisted round and tipped me in." "You were dreaming, I count on, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "You shouldn't take a seat in such an area, if you sense sleepy." "What about the others?" Frodo asked. "I wonder what sort of dreams they're having." They went round to the opposite side of the tree, after which Sam understood the click that he had heard. Pippin had vanished. The crack through which he had laid himself had closed together, in order that now not a chink will be visible. Merry turned into trapped, another crack had closed about his waist, his legs lay out of doors, however the rest of him was inside a dark starting, the edges of which gripped like a pair of pincers. Frodo and Sam beat rst upon the tree trunk wherein Pippin had lain. They then struggled frantically to pull open the jaws of the crack that held bad Merry. It changed into pretty vain. "What a bad issue to occur!" cried Frodo wildly. "Why did we ever come into this dreadful forest? I desire we have been all back it." Crick hollow. He kicked the tree with all his power, heedless of his personal feat. A hardly ever perceptible shiver ran through the stem and up into the branches, the leaves rustled and whispered, but with a legitimate now of faint and far-off laughter. "I assume we haven't were given an axe among our luggage, Mr. Frodo?" asked Sam. "I brought a little hatchet for chopping rewood," stated Frodo. "That wouldn't be a whole lot use." "Wait a minute!" cried Sam, struck through and concept counselled with the aid of rewood. "We'd do something with weed," stated Frodo doubtfully. "We'd reach roasting Pippin alive inside. We would try to harm or frighten this tree to begin with," said Sam earnestly. "If it don't allow them to go, I'll have it down, if I should gnaw it." He ran to the ponies and earlier than long came back with 2 tinder boxes and a hatchet. Fast they amassed dry grass and leaves, and bits of bark, and made a pile of damaged twigs and chopped sticks. Those they heaped towards the trunk at the some distance aspect of the tree from the prisoners. As soon as Sam had struck a spark into the tinder, it kindled the dry grass, and a area of aim and smoke went up. The twigs crackled. Little engers of relict towards the dry scored rind of the ancient tree and scorched it. A tremor ran via the whole willow. The leaves appeared to hiss above their heads with a legitimate of ache and anger. A loud scream got here from Merry, and from a long way inside the tree. They heard Pippin deliver a muffled yell. Placed it out, positioned it out, cried Merry. He'll squeeze me in, if you don't. He says so. Who what, shouted Frodo, dashing round to the other side of the tree. Positioned it out, put it out, begged Merry. The branches of the willow began to sway violently. There was a sound as of a wind growing and spreading outwards to the branches of all the different trees spherical about, as although that they had dropped a stone into the quiet slumber of the river valley, and installation ripples of anger that ran out over the whole forest. Sam kicked on the little tree and stamped out the sparks. However, Frodo, without any clean concept of why he did so, or what he was hoping for, ran alongside the direction crying help! Help! Assist! It regarded to him that he could hardly listen the sound of his very own shrill voice. It became blown away from him by the willow wind and drowned in a clamour of leaves, as soon because the phrases left his mouth. He felt desperate, lost, and witless. Suddenly he stopped. There has been a solution, or so he idea, however. It seemed to return from at the back of him, away down the route in addition. Returned within the woodland. He grew to become spherical and listened, and soon there may be absolute confidence. Someone changed into making a song, a music, a deep satisfied voice. Become singing carelessly and thankfully, however it was making a song nonsense. Hey dole! Merry dole! Ring-a-dong dillo! Ring-a-dong! Hop alongside! Foul-low the willow! Tom bomb, jolly Tom, Tom bombadillo! Half hopeful and half of scared of some new risk, Frodo and Sam now both stood nevertheless. Unexpectedly out of a long string of nonsense words. Or in order that they regarded, the voice rose up loud and clean and burst into this music. Hey! Come merry dole! Dairy dole! My darling! Light is going the weather wind and the feathered starling. Down alongside Underhill, shining inside the daylight, waiting on your step for the bloodless starlight, there my quiet girl is, river woman's daughter, slender because the willow wand, clearer than the water. Antique Tom Bombadil water lilies bringing. Comes hopping home once more. Can you hear him making a song? Hello! Come merry dole! Dairy dole! And Mario, goldberry, goldberry, merry yellow berry-o! Bad vintage willow guy, you tuck your roots away. Tom S in a rush now. Evening will follow day. Tom S going domestic again, water lilies bringing. Howdy! Come dairy dole! Are you able to hear me making a song? Frodo and Sam stood as though enchanted. The wind puffed out. The leaves hung silently once more on stiff branches. There has been another burst of track, and then unexpectedly, hopping and dancing along the course, there seemed above the reeds an vintage battered hat with a tall crown, and a protracted blue feather caught in the band. With another hop and a bound there got here into view a man, or so it seemed. At any charge he become too big and heavy for a hobbit, if no longer pretty tall enough for one of the large human beings, even though he made noise sufficient for one, stumping together with exceptional yellow boots on his thick legs, and charging through grass and rushes like a cow going down to drink. He had a blue coat and an extended brown beard, his eyes have been blue and bright, and his face changed into red as a ripe apple, however creased into 100 wrinkles of laughter. In his fingers he carried on a huge leaf as on a tray a small pile of white water lilies. "Help!" cried Frodo and Sam, going for walks towards him with their palms stretched out. "Whoa! Whoa! Constant there!" cried the antique man, preserving up one hand, and that they stopped short, as if they have been struck stiff. "Now, my little fellows, where be you a going to, puffing like a bellows? What's the problem right here then? Do you recognize who I am? I'm Tom Bombadil. Inform me what's your hassle?" "Tom's in a rush now. Don't you overwhelm my lilies. My buddies are stuck within the willow tree," cried Frodo breathlessly. "Grasp Merry's being squeezed in a crack," cried Sam. "What?" shouted Tom Bombadil, leaping up in the air. "Old Man Willow, not worse than that, which can soon be mended. I understand the tune for him. Old Grey Willow Man. I'll freeze his marrow cold, if he don't behave himself. I'll sing his roots off. I'll sing a wind up and blow leaf and department away. Vintage Guy Willow." Putting down his lilies carefully at the grass, he ran to the tree. There he saw Merry's foot nonetheless sticking out. The relaxation had already been drawn in addition inside. Tom positioned his mouth to the crack and began singing into it in a low voice. They couldn't trap the phrases, but naturally Merry became aroused. His legs started out to kick. Tom sprang away, and breaking off a striking department smote the aspect of the willow with it. "You allow them to out once more, antique man Willow," he stated. "What be you a thinking of? You need to now not be waking, devour earth, dig deep, drink water, fall asleep. Bombadil is speak me." He then seized Merry's toes and drew him out of the abruptly widening crack. There was a tearing creak and the opposite crack cut up open, and out of it Pippin sprang, as if he had been kicked. Then with a noisy snap, both cracks closed speedy again. A shudder ran via the tree from root to tip, and whole silence fell. "Thank you," stated the hobbits, one after the alternative. Tom Bombadil burst out giggling. "Well, my little fellows," stated he, stooping so that he peered into their faces, "you shall come home with me. The table is all laden with yellow cream, honeycomb, and white bread and butter. Goldberry is ready. Time sufficient for questions across the supper table. You observe after me as brief as you are in a position." With that he picked up his lilies, and then with a beckoning wave of his hand went hopping and dancing along the path eastward, nonetheless making a song loudly and nonsensically. Too surprised and too relieved to speak, the hobbits observed after him as rapid as they may, but that changed into no longer fast enough. Tom soon disappeared in the front of them, and the noise of his making a song got fainter. And in addition away, his voice came oating lower back to them in a loud halloo. "Hop along, my little friends, up the withywindle. Tom's going on in advance, candles for to kindle. Down west sinks the sun, soon you will be groping. While the night shadows fall, then the door will open, out of the window panes light will twinkle yellow. Fear no alder black. Heed no hoary willow. Worry neither root nor bough. Tom goes on before you. Hiya now. Merry Dole. We'll be watching for you. After that the hobbits heard no extra. Almost straight away the Sunday appeared to sink into the trees behind them. They thought of the slanting mild of nighttime glittering on the Brandywine River, and the windows of Buckleberry beginning to gleam with loads of lighting. Amazing shadows fell across them, trunks and branches of timber hung darkish and dangerous over the path. White mists commenced to upward thrust and curl on the floor of the river and stray about the roots of the bushes. Upon its borders, out of the very floor at their foot, a shadowy steam arose and mingled with the hastily falling dusk. It have become difficult to observe the direction, and that they have been very tired. Their legs regarded leaden. Extraordinary furtive noises ran many of the bushes and reeds on both aspect of them, and if they regarded up to the light sky, they stuck sight of queer gnarled and knobbly faces that gloomed dark against the twilight, and leered down at them from the excessive bank and the rims of the wooden. They began to experience that all this U.S. become unreal, and that they have been stumbling via an ominous dream that led to no awakening. Simply as they felt their foot slowing right down to a standstill, they observed that the ground became gently rising. The water started out to murmur. In the darkness they stuck the white glimmer of foam, where the river owed over a quick fall. Then suddenly the trees came to and give up, and the mists have been left behind. They stepped out from the forest, and determined a extensive sweep of grass welling up before them. The river, now small and swift, turned into jumping merrily down to fulfill them, glinting right here and there inside the mild of the stars, which have been already shining inside the sky. The grass beneath their foot become clean and brief, as if it were mown or shaven. The eaves of the wooded area in the back of were clipped, and trim as a hedge. The path become now plain earlier than them, well tended and bordered with stone. It wound up directly to the top of a grassy knoll, now grey below the pale starry night, and there, nevertheless excessive above them. On a further slope, they noticed the twinkling lights of a house. Down again the course went, after which up once more, up a protracted smooth hillside of turf, towards the mild. Suddenly a huge yellow beam owed out brightly from a door that become opened. There was Tom Bombadil's house before them, up, down, beneath hill. In the back of it a steep shoulder of the land lay grey and naked, and beyond that the darkish shapes of the Barrow Downs stalked away into the Jap night time. They all hurried ahead, hobbits and ponies. Already half there. Weariness and all their fears had fallen from them. Hello! Come Merry! Dole! Rolled out the tune to greet them. Hiya! Come Derry Dole! Hop along, my hearties! Hobbits! Ponies all! We are keen on events. Now let the amusing begin. Let us sing together. Then every other clear voice, as young and as historical as spring, like the track of a satisfied water owing down into the night from a bright morning within the hills, came falling like silver to meet them. Now permit the track start. Let us sing together. Of solar, stars, moon and mist, rain and cloudy climate, light on the budding leaf, dew on the feather, wind at the open hill, bells on the heather, reeds by way of the shady pool, lilies on the water. Antique Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. And with that song the hobbits stood upon the brink, and a golden light became all approximately them.